like to, at the outset, congratulate the Institute of Strategic Studies on its consistent efforts to turn Islamabad Conclave into one of Pakistan's leading annual policy dialogue. The ISSI's contribution to informed research, multi-stakeholders dialogue, narrative building, and regional and international outreach is widely acknowledged. I also commend this Track 1.5 initiative with the participation of eminent speakers from Pakistan and abroad. Distinguished participants, we are gathered here at a pivotal moment in our history, a time when the world is going through immense turbulence, and the global order is undergoing a profound transformation. There is a distinct shift in the balance of power with the emergence of new economic and military powers. Most observers contend that the world's center of gravity has shifted to the east. Many are proclaiming the decline of the West and the rise of the East. While there is immense flux and uncertainty, one thing is absolutely clear. We are living in a world that is both fragmented and multi-polarizing. In this rapidly changing geopolitical landscape, Pakistan, a nation with immense potential, faces both significant challenges as well as opportunities. As the Director General ISSI has rightly pointed out, we are witnessing power contestations. We see the emergence of rising power and also resurgent powers, which is Russia. And they are perceived as a threat to the West's global dominance and especially the global order established in the post-World War II era. The growing US-China rivalry has far-reaching implications for the global security, stability, and economic growth. Pakistan has a strategic partnership with China and a long-standing friendship with the United States of America. Pakistan would like these two global powers to constructively engage and find a modus vivendi on the basis of peaceful coexistence. Both these powers and the rest of the world would enormously suffer if the rivalry between these two power blocks turns into confrontation and another Cold War. In this summit meeting in Bali, which is seen as a very encouraging development for all international observers, both President Biden and President Xi have committed themselves to managing the US-China competition responsibly. The rest of the world must hold them to this commitment, not only for global stability, but also the future of our next generation. In this period of heightened tension, the incidence of armed conflict has reached the highest levels since the end of the World War II. Also, in the wake of major power competitions, there is a process of over-scrutinization across diverse domains, from trade to technology, to currency, to visas, to sports. Most significantly, the arms control and disarmament regimes have undergone serious erosion. With the raging war in Europe, we have witnessed a sharp rise in nuclear rhetoric and a new momentum towards nuclear weapons development. It should hardly be surprising that the Bulletin of atomic scientists recently set the so-called doomsday clock at 90 seconds to midnight. Those who are familiar with the phenomena know that this is the closest it has ever been to a nuclear catastrophe. If these dangerous trends are not immediately arrested and reversed, the very survival of our planet would come into serious questions. Indeed, humanity stands at another inflection point in our history. It must make the right choices, choosing peace over war and cooperation over confrontation.
Today's session is structured around key sub-themes that provide a comprehensive lens through which to view the dynamics of major power competition. Firstly, we will explore the overarching theme of major power competition and its emerging realities. The changing nature of this competition extends beyond traditional geopolitics to encompass economic and technological advancement and domains. What does this mean for the rest of the world, particularly for the region like South Asia? The second focuses on China's Belt and Road Initiative, a transformative project that has reshaped global economic connectivity and introduced new frameworks for international development. As China positions itself as a driver of global development, what lessons can other nations draw from its emphasis on infrastructure, connectivity, and inclusive growth?
The present times are increasingly being described as a period of great power competition. This particular framing of the global situation comes from the United States academic and policy circles, but it has now gained widespread currency. In 2022, the US National Security Strategy formally proclaimed that post-Cold War era is over and a competition is underway between the major powers to shape what comes next. The National Security Strategy went on to identify China and Russia as the two major powers with whom the US would be competing. It distinguished between the two powers, stating that Russia poses an immediate threat, most notably to the regional security order in Europe. On the other hand, China presented America's most consequential geopolitical challenge as it, and I quote, is the only competitor with both the intent to reshape the international order and increasingly the economic, diplomatic, military, and the technological power to advance this objective, unquote. This is how the US sees the world. It is not how its supposed competitors, nor many other countries see the world. Russia would contend that the threat to the international order is more an outcome of US policies to constantly expand its sphere of influence, with scant regard for Moscow's clearly proclaimed red lines. China would insist that it has no interest in any confrontation with the US, and that global challenges necessitate cooperation and not conflict. Nevertheless, we are now in a period of great power competition, because that is the perception of the preeminent power, and its policies ensure that its perception becomes a reality for the rest of us. But what is driving the US to adopt this position? What is compelling it to view Russia, and more so China, as its competitors? It's only rationale that Russia is an imperial power, bent on regaining its lost empire, and that China is leveraging its economic success into aggressive policies in its neighborhood, is not entirely convincing. More convincing are the structural and the related financial and technological explanations. The former, put forward by the offensive realist school, most prominently by Professor Mearsheimer, posits that no great power can accept any regional hegemon from emerging. Conflict is inevitable if a preeminent power perceives that a rising power has the potential to be a regional hegemon and consequently is a challenger to its preeminence. This theoretical insight is buttressed by those who argue that China poses a threat to US preeminence due to its advances in emerging technologies, especially artificial intelligence, that shall shape the future global economy. Also, China may be in a position to alter the world financial architecture by offering a viable alternative to the dollar-based system of payments. The erosion of its technological and financial dominance cannot be countenanced by Washington, and this has been seen in the recent tweet by President-elect Trump when he threatened 100% tariffs on countries that are looking at a new BRICS currency or backing any other currency to replace the dollar. The mighty dollar, he said. So the mighty dollar is now, they feel the threat. So how does the US intend to manage its competition with the two great powers? There is broad bipartisan consensus in Washington that the principal adversary is China, unfortunately. But there is a divergence of view on how to address the Russia-China alignment. The Biden administration has taken the position that it is necessary and possible to weaken Russia while simultaneously containing China. The incoming Trump administration seems to be of the view that there should be a settlement with Russia so there can be an unrelenting focus on China. They entertain the possibility that Russia may be induced to de-align from China. Much is to be seen now. At this point, it may be useful to unpackage the word competition, ladies and gentlemen. It needs to be distinguished from confrontation and outright conflict. The US aim would be to compete intensely in all domains: economic, technological, military, and even confront China, preferably through proxies. But all the while, it would avoid direct conflict. What tools would the US employ in the competition with China? The Biden administration is using a broad repertoire of measures, including technology denial, trade restrictions, alliance formation, and a military buildup. This is coupled with a few fairly ineffectual efforts to counter China's formidable development and infrastructure initiatives. The Trump administration is likely to use the same toolbox, but with differing emphasis on specific measures. Trade and technology restrictions shall be accentuated, though it must be said that there are differing voices within the incoming administration regarding the extent of trade restrictions that should be employed. The military may be further strengthened, alliance building would proceed, but many difficulties give Trump's somewhat erratic and essentially transactional mode of diplomacy. And there will be even less emphasis on offering meaningful alternatives to China's development initiatives. The US cannot beat the BRI. How successful would be the measures in curbing the rise of China? The US will face with great difficulties in prevailing in its self-imposed competition. Trade restrictions in the form of market exclusion, imposition of tariffs, reshoring of supply chains will impose significant costs on the US economy itself. It will burden an already inflation-fatigued populace, which raises questions about the long-term political sustainability of these measures. There's a lot of talk right now by the incoming president, but I think we need to see what the realistic stuff will happen when he comes into power.
Distinguished participants, over the next 2 days, in 5 separate working sessions, Our eminent speakers will explore a whole range of themes relating to the evolving global order and prescribe the pathway for Pakistan as it navigates this complex landscape. These are going to be exciting conversations. I take this opportunity to once again thank our chief guest and all the practitioners, scholars, academics, experts, and young students for being a part of this enterprise. I assure everyone that this feast of ideas would be intellectually stimulating and would also generate practical recommendations for the consideration of decision makers. So I recommend to everyone to imbibe as much as possible and to enjoy as much as possible.